I think that's one key to this business is how you can, traverse, because some people get stuck in trying to create it all. It's all been done before.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello, welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, I'm excited to have another great guest. We have Rey Reyes. Ismail, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Todd. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and from now on, we're going to call you by what you go by, which is Rey, and if that's all right.
Perfect.
Awesome. Let's do it. So Rey has been actively investing in residential real estate since 2005 and has focused exclusively on multifamily since 2016. He has led MI Real Estate in investing in 11 multifamily properties in Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee, totaling 401 units, valued at $28 million. And Rey also provides independent counseling to multifamily investors and is a best-selling author of BLUF, Bottom Line Upfront, about passively investing in multifamily properties, and a whole slew of other things. You are a retired lieutenant colonel of the U.S. Army.
U.S. Army?
Dude, over 28 years of service. That is so awesome. And thank you so much for that service. That is so cool.
It was my honor. It really was.
Yeah, that's awesome. And man, 28 years of service. That's a long time. We'll dig into that a little bit more too. So let's dig in. Give me a little bit more kind of about your background and where you've came from and where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Puerto Rican by background. I was born in Puerto Rico, raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so I'm still suffering from our Packer loss.
Oh man,
not too long ago. I'm hurting for that, but
I'm celebrating. I'm a Minnesota guy.
Some people, a lot of people don't hate the Packers. At least, they may have another team that they favor, but it's not like a love-hate relationship. But nevertheless, so yeah, raised there. Went to Marquette University, and then I enlisted for money, frankly, to get some benefits, and that's a reason for a lot of people to join the military. And it's just something that stuck with me. When I got out, I decided I want to come back in and go active duty. And so there started my journey into my first career field, which I was very passionate about. I always had a second passion in my life, and it was real estate. That kind of started out throughout my years in the military, investing in single family, as a lot of people do. We move around, we buy, wherever we move. But that turned into a more specific, focused passion of mine into multifamily, because I really wanted to do something besides just, invest here and there. I really wanted to do something bigger than that. And so that kind of led me to where I'm at today. I put in my paperwork a little bit sooner than I needed to. I could have stuck around a little bit more in the Army. But I felt like I had to pursue this, this other passion. And so here we are.
Yeah. I mean, how could you give up after only 28 years, right? So why do it seems like there's a lot of people I know that are military guys and gals who are real estate investors. And it seems like almost everyone that I know has had an extended stay in the military. They didn't just serve their 4 years and get out. It seems like everybody I know that is an investor in real estate has stayed in the military for 10 plus years, or still in it in some capacity. Why, is there a reason?
So there's a couple reasons. The first one, and this has changed since I got out. It used to be that you had to do 20 years before you got a retirement. So if you kind of stuck around long enough, right around the 10-year mark is kind of when you have to decide, is this long-term or do I want to do something else? Because there's, you have opportunity costs that start growing if you stay in and decide, well, at 17 I'm going to get out. It doesn't work. So a lot of people, they stick around, they do their 20, and at that point they have something to hold on to kind of keep the family going and their lifestyle to some extent. I mean, it's not at the same amount of money as if you stayed in, but it's something, and it allows you to sort of start moving in a different direction without completely foregoing some responsibilities that you have. A lot of people, if they're not in the military, they have to kind of get through a portion of W-2 time where they can accumulate enough cash flow so that they can make that transition. In the military, you have that retirement that helps, gets you there a little bit quicker when you move.
Yeah, makes sense. So why the transition from like the single families to multifamily? What made you make that change?
I tell you, I mean, it's something that I try to talk to people every day about, because a lot of folks are in the single family space. There's a lot of reasons, but it's primarily, it's if you want to do this and actually get somewhere fairly quickly, single family is not going to get you there. The process is a little different, but it's mostly the same. You got to go through some acquisition, looking at what properties you want. You got to do some analysis, and by the time that's all done, it's 2-3 months, and you got one asset. One unit that if your tenant decides to skip, or they just move, then they wreck the place, you may have 2 months of zero income. And and you do all of that and you hope to get about 400, cash flow, and hope that nothing major breaks. Right. And so the scale that you have with multifamily is what's so attractive. And it's kind of hard to grasp because people think you got to be able to have millions of dollars to do it. But once you get beyond that mindset, it really is a no-brainer. It's actually less risk than single family.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's funny. I hear people talk about, single family, you get your return on investments better. You can make $400 on a single family house, and you can't make $400 a unit in multifamily. And that's true, right? But what they don't realize is once you start scaling that single family business, the returns don't stay the same unless you're hands-on, unless you're the one doing all the maintenance and showing the units and stuff like that. But that's a totally different business model, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it looks like single family on paper might make more money, but now you have that vacancy. You have that tenant that destroys your unit. I know we've both dealt with it when we own these single family houses. On paper, it shows $400 a month, but in reality, you made $400-500 a month for 4 years in a row. And then all of a sudden we had that tenant that destroyed the place. And now that year we just lost $800 a month, so it comes back.
Yeah. And the other thing is that when you start scaling, some of the costs associated with running that business, real estate business, reduces, right? You have your property managers are a little bit less expensive per unit. They're actually better. They're more professional. They have, it's not some agent that takes a couple houses and, now I'm a property manager. It's an actual company that can handle all those things for you. And there's just a lot of other benefits that go along with it. We can talk about that all this whole call and probably not get through it all.
Yeah, a lot more professional to talk about the real estate agent that decides they're going to be a property manager versus the big property management company, right? That manages 15,000 units or a lot more potentially. So yeah, big differences. Well, let's talk about your business. And you've grown this business. You're now multifamily. Give us some advice. What have you done that has allowed you to operate the business successfully? So this thing is making money, running smoothly. What are maybe 3 key things that you've seen that have played into your success?
I mean, I think the first thing is for me was just understanding the importance of partnerships in this business. And that's another thing that's attracted to military is we come from a place where, mission first and, team, it's not about the individual. Well, it's not quite exactly the same in the multifamily space, but it's pretty darn close because you need to have good partners, not just, general partners, but you need passive, passive partners that are willing to go into these deals. If it's a syndication, if it's a joint venture, you got to have, partners that are willing to, work with you. You have your network, which are all partners, whether it's your insurance agent, that's, whether it's your attorneys. So understanding the importance of partnership in this business was probably the most important thing for me. And in order to do it quickly, it was a matter of how do I get a network without having to build one from scratch. And I'll leave it there because I think there's more to that. But I think that's one key to this business is how you can, traverse, because some people get stuck in trying to create it all. It's all been done before. There's people that, that do that. And so I think that's key. The other thing is I don't focus on, sort of, how many units I have. And that's not a goal of mine, right? Because I think it's a slippery slope. When you start going down this sort of goals of, hey, I'm going to take down 1,000 units. Well, now you start cheating. You start looking at deals a little bit different because you got to hit your goal. And maybe the returns aren't quite what your investors want and what you're telling investors, but the numbers are close, right? So I stay away from that. I focus more on what I call progression. So incrementally growing my business in a way where I create additional systems when I need them, via virtual assistants, and I'm focused on wealth building over time as opposed to here's what I got to do to hit these 1,000 units. So I think that's a dangerous proposition that a lot of people do. And I know it's just for motivation that a lot of people do that when they set their goals. But some people take it beyond just motivation, and they start, it becomes something more than that, and that's where people get in trouble. And then the last thing is just being proportional with your life, right? And so that means that yes, you have to work, and and I don't mean balance when I talk about work, proportional. I don't mean the kind of balance where you do 8 hours of work, 8 hours of family time, and then you sleep for 8 hours or do spiritual, because I think there's ways that you can have have that balance. And it may be that for when you're first starting your business, and it was for me, I was putting in a lot more time. It just took more time as you're kind of working through these things and making sure you're doing it correctly. But now kind of scaling back a little bit and looking how I can sort of balance my life so I can do this long term, and I can help people get to where they want to go without sacrificing. And when you sacrifice, you can do that over the short term, but if you do it over the long term, they're not worth it. I mean, your physical body can only handle certain things, and so all those things start playing a role. So I think those are the key things that I focused on that have helped me is really understanding partnerships, being more of an incremental business model versus some other models where you're trying to expand and grow to a point where you're almost to the point of failure, and then you try to bring it back, and then just trying to be proportional about my life, and I think those all help.
Yeah, those all speak volumes to me. I mean, I've seen a lot of growth in the last few years due to partnerships, and a lot of even some of the growth that maybe it's like, oh, I want to go farther, but you can see it with the relationships being built and the possibilities that are surrounding you when you start doing that. That's so important. I love the unit count example. I see it so often, especially in like the social media world we live in today. It's like people always brag on their unit count, and that's what they're trying to achieve. And first of all, we don't even know what that means. Like you're telling me you own 6,000 units, but you own like 2% of 6,000 units, or do you actually own like the majority of them? Are you the main spot? Like there's a totally, we don't know what any of that means. So when we get caught up in what other people are doing, we got to get that ego boost to get our unit count. That's where we get in trouble, like you said. So those speak volumes to me. I love them. Hey, real quick, I just want to let you know about the multifamily challenge that we got going on. It's a 5-day multifamily challenge on how to get an offer in quickly, right? So we're going to teach you in 5 days, 5 1-hour sessions. We're going to go through the steps and the process to get there. So go to mfichallenge.com, mfichallenge.com. You can sign up. It's free if you want the VIP. There's a bunch of things that we'll give away too. You got to you do have to pay for that, but hey, it's going to be well worth it. Again, you can get in for free. We're going to teach you how to get that offer across the table, get the LOI in, all the steps. So Ellis Hammond and Ellis was episode 316. Check out his episode. And we're going to be doing this next week. So sign up now at mfichallenge.com, and get in there. We're doing it next week, and it's going to be awesome. So hope to see you there. What's a mistake that you've made on your journey here, and how have you learned from it? How can our audience learn from it?
I think honestly, the biggest mistake that I made is taking so long to get to where I'm at in my mindset. Yeah. Because it's, I mean, we talked about the number of years I started investing, in about 2005 is when I bought my first investment property. And it took me all the way to 2016 or so to figure out that wasn't the answer. So I think it's, how can I help? I know you're trying to do the same thing. Is how can I help people not make the same mistake? Yeah. Because, it's hard to get there once you wait that long. And there's still this notion of risk, and people are afraid. A lot of times, with a single family, they can kind of see it, touch it. They know they can kind of do it by themselves. And so that makes it a little bit more comforting. But man, it's just not the right answer. It just isn't. So that's my biggest, if I could go back, I probably right around 2010, I really had the capacity to do it. And it took me another 5 years of kind of churning before I did.
Yeah, you got to get out of your own way, man. I'm the same. It's the same thing. Like we're like speaking the exact same language here, man. I did the same thing. It was like, why did I think I couldn't expand? You just like that limiting belief, right? The paradigm just never shifted. It took way too long to shift. But now, as you mentioned before, though, we can have that incremental growth, right? The wealth building development over time that you might already mentioned, and it's all okay, right? It's all okay. But you're just kind of telling people, hey, you don't need to be as slow as I am.
And you talk to people. I know I talk to people all the time, and and especially this time of year, because people have just set their goals. They've kind of reflected on last year. Yeah. And I don't understand. I have a lot of people that come to me and say, we talked last year and we talked about all these things I was going to do, and I didn't do any of it. And so I want to do it this year. And I'm like, all right, well, you got to take that step, man. I mean, it's just a matter of taking a step, and some people just can't get there. That's the other thing, just the fear of the unknown is just mind boggling. I think that's why military people also do well in this business, because we are taught to take risk. You mitigate that risk. Now, it doesn't mean you go out there willy-nilly and just make some, just throw money around. But there are ways to mitigate that risk that don't paralyze you. And what happens is a lot of people just sit there and they have this paralysis analysis thing going where they want to study everything and it's still not enough, and they never take any steps.
What are a couple of ways you mitigate risk then on this deal without paralyzing yourself, right? What are a few things that our listeners can hear from
Sure. You? So the first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to understand the market before I started looking at, so I started out as a passive investor, my first couple deals, just because I wanted to understand the language, right? And so for me, I had to be comfortable with the markets, and I have a background in analysis. So it wasn't completely foreign, but it was different. So I needed to understand, I needed to come up with those on my own before I went out and reached out to people about potential investments. And so that was one way that I could personally mitigate that. Other people, they just trust someone, someone has, done well. They've been in this business for a long time, and it's not so much about what they know, but they trust that individual so much that they're willing to take that step. But whatever it is, you got to do it. For me, I didn't have those long sort of relationships with people in this industry, because I was in a completely different industry where I couldn't even have my phone in my office a lot of times, And so I come to this place where now I got to kind of get out in the open. And so for me, the important thing was to understand what I was getting into personally, analyze, and then look for people that were working and understood the market like I did. It's a sort of, it helps you also because once you do your own analysis and you're hearing other people give you sort of that same language, you feel comfortable that you're making good decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned networking without starting from scratch. How does somebody network
Yeah.
without starting from scratch if you don't have a network?
Yeah, no, that's, I tell you, I mean, and that's another thing that I try to talk to people. So here's what you do. It's simple. Figure out what it is that you can offer someone else, be it money, be it some sort of talent, just sweat equity, whatever that is, and go talk to people and say, here's what I can do for you. And then they bring you onto their team and you work with them. And then by virtue of being on their team, whether if it's, whether it's a general partnership or if it's even a passive investing opportunity, you buy into that network. You by being there and by investing, you get in a chance to meet those operators, to talk to them, to ask them questions as you're going through and ask them who their attorneys are and all these sort of questions to sort of build that network around you. And you don't have to figure out from scratch. In fact, it's even better because you can drop the name. Hey, I talked to such and such. They said you were, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And, we need to talk. And so it kind of actually helps even that because you're able to sort of get beyond that initial step in many cases, especially when you're dealing with brokers, it's, you're kind of, until you prove yourself, you're at the bottom of the barrel. And so when you can kind of drop a name, it kind of helps you get at least off the bottom, and start working your way to the top. So inject yourself into a network, inject yourself into something and work from there. So now it's basically a foot in the door technique. You put your foot in and then you figure out what's going on around you and you start building that network that way, as opposed to like on the outside. And I'm going to, I need to have somebody that can underwrite and I need someone that can do this and I need someone that can do that. It's going to take you too long and you may never get there. And you're frustrated because, it's been a year and you still haven't been able to find a deal. Well, there's people finding deals now. Go talk to them and get in their deals, and then you can build the network.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I mean by that. That's the best way to explain it.
Yeah, no, I like that. And you can also add value just even outside of real estate. I tell people all the time, look, if let's say you're a really good guitar player and you meet somebody that you want to network with and they want to learn how to play guitar, like there you go. There maybe as your way in. So it doesn't always have to just be through real estate.
Yep.
Maybe you got other ways you can get in the door and then eventually, you can start learning from them. So yeah, that's
It's
really
very true.
advice.
One of the easy ways that I see a lot is, so you can be good at real estate and not be good at social media. And so sometimes having that skill, that marketing skill and that ability to work, those networks is invaluable to investors because as you know that, there's two sides of this thing. One is finding the properties. The other one is raising the capital in the syndication model to be able to, put the two together and acquire those assets. And so you really need to have both sides of that. And social media plays a role.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, especially if you're young and you're approaching somebody that is, I mean, even myself, I mean, I'm not that old, but the social media is just, it's not natural to me. I didn't grow up within the social media era. And if you're, even 5 to 7 years younger than me, you're going to be in that social media era and you can add a lot of value.
I'm still trying to get on TikTok though. I don't know about you, but I haven't figured out the TikTok game yet.
No, I have no, I have no, I have no interest. Like I can't even get, like I struggle to be into it with like Instagram and Twitter and even Facebook. So it's like, yeah, maybe one day, probably not. That's all good. Um, so how do you like to give back? I think I already know the answers, but how do you like to give back?
Yeah, so there's two things, and this kind of goes to the spirituality part of sort of the balance aspect. And so I like to give back in two main ways. One, I love helping out veterans, and so wherever I can just give them my time. I just so many times I just spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour answering their questions, just, talking to them and, and trying to understand where they're at and what they're trying to do. And, not just in real estate, but in other things.
Yeah.
And so anywhere I can help them, I feel like it's something some way that I can still give back, and so there are a lot of veterans that get out and, and they just can't figure out how to make it work on the outside. And, veterans there's 22 veterans a day that kill themselves. And so if we can do something, just sort of get out there and talk with them, I think that's half the battle, so that's always something that's, is near my heart. And after 28 years, I feel like I understand them, and if I can help them, that's even better. The second thing is I've always given for probably now for almost 20 years to a organization called Children's International. And I give money every month to them, and I've actually helped raise, I guess the word isn't raise, but given money for 3 young children that were disadvantaged in one in Colombia and 2 in the Dominican Republic. And I just gave money to help them sort of get the things that they needed that we a lot of times take for granted. And so that's some other way that I give, and I'd like to do more. I'm trying to, as I get this going, I'd like to see how I can maybe provide to another child, and maybe, and then, obviously part of, building wealth is not just hoarding it, it's having it available to them do those kind of things. Because, a lot of people may want to give, but if they have nothing to give, I mean, it's kind of, I guess they can give time, but I'd like to be able to do more of that.
I really like that. Part of wealth isn't about hoarding. It's really about, what good you can do with it. That's really true. And thank you for sharing that, for being a blessing to those people. So what's I mentioned in the intro, BLUF, your book.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit about the inspiration about the book, and maybe like a quick little snapshot of what it is.
Yeah. So a lot of people will, they don't understand what the term BLUF means, but and so I spell it out. That's part of the reason why the title is so long, because I wanted to make sure that everyone got it.
So short, but it's so long.
And part of it is because in the military, we're kind of raised to think about problems that way, and figure out how to provide information to others quickly. And so when we talk to leaders, we want to give them a bottom line up front on whatever the situation is. If they're coming to if they're coming into the operations center, hey, what's going on with the enemy? What's going on? So you have to be able to, speak, in very simplistic and short ways to provide a lot of information quickly, because they're busy. And so that's kind of how we kind of, part of our culture is to always give that bottom line up front, that elevator pitch, if you will, to our leaders. And so I think that resonates with veterans, and that was kind of where I wanted to go with this book. And this book is nothing more than sort of a flow chart, a checklist of what a passive investor can do to understand those investments, and to be prepared to invest, right? And so, because if you've never done it before, it could be, like we talked about, a little bit scary. So this kind of paints a picture in very short version. It's about 100 pages. And it's not meant to kind of elaborate on anything. It's just meant to kind of take them from point A to point B with these type of investments. And so that was kind of the goal. And then obviously I started out as a limited partner, as a passive investor. And so I had that insight. And then I also had the whole, sort of that background and understanding those pain points that military people go through as we're moving from place to place. And if you want to invest, and how do you do it? And a lot of times people would invest someplace, and then a year later they get orders that they weren't expecting, and now they got a house. And what do you do with that house? And oh, by the way, an investment property is probably not the same as where your family wants to live. They're not exactly the same. I always wanted to put my wife in a quad. It never worked. And so all those kind of things that I was kind of trying to convey in this book on the possibilities.
Nice. Nice. So no fluff, no extra sugar, just straight to the point,
Yep.
military style. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, I got a couple of last questions before we wrap up. First question, what's your favorite book?
And I know a lot of people say it, but it really is the mindset book for me, and that's Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, just getting that in your brain and understanding that is so critical to kind of moving forward in this. If you don't get that, nothing else makes sense. And there's other books I can mention, like I also like the Cash Flow Quadrant. That's my number two. Kind of that goes into a lot more detail. But yeah, just the mindset aspect of that book is just phenomenal. It helped me tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reading it to my daughter. What are your 3 pillars of wealth creation?
We talked about it a little bit. I think it's just partnerships, really grinding down on the partnerships. I call them the 3 Ps. And we try to put it, acronyms into everything, right? So it's the P is partnership, progression, and proportion. And that's kind of been my goal and my way forward here. At some point, we all kind of become passive investors, I think. You get to a point where it's like, okay, I want to do other things, but I still know this business is good business. So you go from being potentially a general partner to just passively investing in other deals, and then you do other things that you want to do, or maybe you just do less. You maybe only do 1 deal instead of 3 or 4 in a year.
Yep.
But yeah, that's kind of my path forward, if you will.
That's cool. Awesome. Well, look, Ray, I really appreciated our conversation and the information you've brought. Really, a lot of golden nuggets here, I think, that people can take out of this conversation. The 3 Ps, the networking without starting from scratch, which is huge. Just a lot of great information. How can our listeners get in touch with you, learn more about what you got going on?
Yeah, the easiest way is on my website, mirealestate.us. And then from there, they can jump into my social media and we can connect in many ways that way.
Perfect. Again, really appreciate it. You have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thanks, Todd, man. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out. And we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.